I'm wondering why I can't find the reason why you're searching for this feeling that you used to have. Are you looking through every mistake that I've made just to be the object of your blame? You feel whole again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been holding my breath, falling from giving you enough, no. There's nothing I'm stealing, it keeps me awake, but I gravitate towards your love. And if I could, I'd move mountains if you to be in my fractured world. I can't make it if you don't make it, 'cause it's you I want, 'cause it's you I want, yeah. I can't make it if you don't make it, 'cause it's you I want. It's finding a reason and making it right to define the rhythm of your love. Your vision I needed, oh, now I'm making you mine. But you won't want me if I'm not enough, no. Can you wait? It's everything I ever wanted. Is it too late? Are you letting me go? I can't make it if you don't make it, 'cause it's you I want, 'cause it's you I want. I can't make it if you don't make it, 'cause it's you I want. make it if you don't make it. 'Cause it's you I want. Yes, you I want. Your spot blows me to pieces. 'Cause it's you I want.
Vielen Dank. Narben, how you doing? How you doing? You all good? This is my favourite thing in the world, is a room full of guitar players all sat there with their arms folded, giving me that, okay, play something impressive kind of look. And meanwhile, I'm still learning the fifth note of the pentatonic scale, so it always makes me laugh. That track in particular always makes me giggle. So when we were recording that track, it was a track that I'd written, and in the way that most tracks do when you're writing them, it started very much as a kind of like a... quite a strummy kind of acoustic guitar kind of driven thing. And then before you know it, you're in the studio and you've got this. It all turned a bit kind of Black Sabbath, Gary Clark Jr.-esque, which I was very happy with. But it still makes me laugh that we went through like innumerable versions of the chorus to actually end up with the guitar part, which made it to the record. Because I went in, and as soon as it started going towards this kind of big, fuzzy Gary Clark Jr.-esque monster, I was like, cool, it wants big Gary Clark Jr. fuzzy-esque chords. It's going to be... something you could hear Tony Iommi playing. And Cyril, our producer, was like, it's too much. There's a lot going on. There's the Hammond, there's like a Mellotron, there's all these other guitar parts. It's too much. Can we simplify it? So I was like, okay, maybe we do it in a different inversion. Maybe I do it up the octave. He was like, nope. Now we're getting into that kind of like mid-range vocal territory. I said, okay, what about this? I'm kind of playing the vocal melody, but I think it works. What about this? He's like, cool. How about we leave the vocal melody to the actual vocalist? I was like, okay. Anyway, an hour later, what we actually end up with on the record is this. Which, in the context of the recording, sounds amazing. What I didn't factor in was that at some point then, I'm going to have to stand up at a guitar clinic in front of a room full of guitar players and essentially open the clinic with Smoke on the Water. So, yeah, probably worth bearing in mind in future. How are we all doing? We good? Thank you very much for coming. Yeah. If you're clapping now, I can go home. I think that's the rules. No, this is the second of this kind of like in-store clinic run that I'm doing. 73 cities in 12 days. Or at least it feels something like that. And I'm very proud of myself. I've learned to drive a car on the wrong side of the road, changing gear with my wrong hand in the past day. It's almost quite literally a crash course. But it's going well and I'm alive, and because this is the second of these clinic dates, I'm still enjoying myself. Catch me in about 2 weeks' time and maybe not so much. But no, joking aside, thank you very much for coming. I was actually at Music Store about 2 weeks ago buying a pedal after my car was broken into while I was at NAMM and a load of my stuff was nicked. Thankfully, I managed to get my pedal board back, but one of the pedals which was stolen, I stopped into Music Store to get. So it's cool to be back here. It's a little bit surreal to actually be on the stage now. So I'm waiting for someone to realise this is all a big mistake and come and throw me off the stage. So the way I generally run these things is rather than me standing here and just talking at you for the next hour, I want to get you involved, make it as much about you as it is about me, because what usually happens is all of the people that have a million questions for me will go suspiciously quiet and shy now, and then will wait until the clinic is over and will follow me into the toilet to ask me what type of battery I use in my fuzz face. So, as an incentive, because this is where everyone goes suspiciously quiet, as an incentive for the first person that wants to put their hand in the air and ask a question, I shall give you my pick, but I'll have to do it later because it's my last one. Any questions? If you can make it about the guitar I'm holding, I'll give you 2 picks. Don't all go at once. Thank you. For the benefit of the video and anyone who didn't hear, he said, "You're so handsome, how do you do it?" I think it was something like that. No, he said, "Why on earth, pretty much, are you changing pickups all of the time?" It's a question I get a lot, is what's happening with your pickup selector, because you seem to be changing positions a lot. And I guess part of it is a bit of not a nervous habit so much as just like something that's crept into my playing. But the long and the short of it is, I guess, in a nice way, it brings it back to the guitar. For me, the thing that I fell in love with about the RevStar, and by extension, any guitar with just 3 pickup positions, is it's kind of idiot-proof. You've got up, down, or middle. Obviously, I came from playing Strats for the very long time. Love Strats, still love Strats now, but the one criticism everyone has of Strats, or one of the criticism everyone has of Strats, is that if you want to get to your 2 or 4 position in the heat of battle while you're playing a gig, good luck finding it. It's like down and up a little bit, maybe no, back down again. Like I said, up, down, middle, there's something incredibly simple about that and very conducive to not getting distracted by which position am I in, where, what's happening. It gives you nothing to focus on other than actually making music, which I know for a lot of guitar players is a novel concept, because it's more fun to play with pedals. But to take that back to the pickup sounds, obviously up, we've got the neck pickup. Not a huge part of developing this guitar was getting the pickups right. Probably the biggest part, to be honest. The strange thing is this guitar is very much based on the custom shop RevStar that I played for 5 years. So all of the research and development and R&D that you would probably do with a signature guitar prior to its release, I'd inadvertently done in 2019. All of the stuff, all of the choices I made back then, pretty much exactly the same as this guitar. So it was just a case of, right, what can we really drill down into now and make sure is perfect? And the pickups were the one that had to be right. I think because of my YouTube channel and because of suddenly, as soon as you start getting a little bit of reach on YouTube, all of these people come out of the woodwork saying, "Do you want to play my guitar? I have a 1954 gold top." And you go, "Yes, please." "I have a 1959 Burst." "Yes, please." "I have a 62 Strat that's never been touched." "Yes, please." It's great. It also absolutely spoils you. Suddenly all of these unobtainium, holy grail spec guitars and pickups and pots and harnesses and et cetera, it does spoil you a little bit, because more often than not, they sound very cool, even if it is somewhat being, blown away by the history that you're holding in your hand. They invariably sound pretty good. So then, finding modern guitars and finding modern pickups, which live up to that expectation, can be a little bit of a nightmare. So I drove Yamaha round the bend with these pickups. I think we went through about 6 different iterations, maybe, of prototypes before we finally settled on ones that I was happy with. And the cool thing about being a guitar player with very limited technical knowledge is that I'm speaking to lovely designers and engineers in Japan who are going, "Tell us what you want." And I'm going back going, "It needs to be creamy, but with bite and girth," and all of these wonderful words which mean absolutely nothing. You might as well be, trying to describe the surface of the moon to them. So we got there in the end, thanks to people who know infinitely more about pickups than I do. And this is what they sound like. So we got the neck pickup. There's a nice amount of low end in there, but it's not like overpowering things. But there's like a sparkle and a chime on the top end, which I really like. It's just a great sounding neck pickup. Going down to the bridge pickup, it's kind of like a thinner version of it, I guess, but we've still got a fair amount of kind of like depth and girth. However, the middle position is honestly the magic for me. That's the live or die moment of pickups. You're kind of like, cool, neck sounds great, middle sounds great. What do they sound like in the middle? And this amazing thing that P90s do, especially in the middle position, where if you roll the volume back or you play more dynamically, it kind of sounds like an acoustic guitar. You get this kind of like, you get all the depth of the neck pickup, but with all of that sparkle and chime of the bridge pickup. Just very pleased with the way they turned out. They take fuzz and overdrive well if you want to get mental. Also, they just clean up beautifully. So if you've got a particularly gainy sound, when you play with your fingers as much as I do as well, it's kind of essential that they're like dynamically responsive. Just a cool sounding set of pickups in a guitar that I think I would like even if it didn't have my name on the back of the headstock. We stuck it on the back of the headstock so that I can see it and remind myself of my name if I forget. But joking aside, I had a moment where first time I walked into a guitar shop and saw this, it was one of those, not only a bit of a pinch me moment as to kind of like, cool, that's my signature guitar, but also just, I think that's a cool looking guitar. I would like that guitar even if it wasn't mine. And rather than sticking a picture of my face or something on the truss rod cover, I thought that if for some unfathomable reason you hate me, but you quite like my guitar, you can still play it without being too annoyed. So that's the product spiel about the guitar. The good news is that we lock the doors until you all buy one, so you have to buy one before you leave. So that's how marketing works. But if you like it, buy one. If you don't like it, probably don't buy one. There we go. That's out of the way. Any more questions? Good t-shirt. Yeah, yeah.
How did you manage the endurance playing the same again, every night, picking up the same quality of sound?
I mean, thank you. Honestly, I love playing live. Playing live is kind of what I got into this to do. the reality of being in a band in the 21st century is that 90% of your time is spent doing admin and answering emails and marketing plans and all that fun stuff, which when you're 15 and you're rocking out in your dad's garage is exactly what you're thinking. I want to understand Facebook advertising. How does Meta's back-end system work? It's not really what you get into this for. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to play gigs. I wanted to play in front of, hundreds or thousands of people and rock out. So there is never a moment where I take that for granted and I have to kind of work up the passion or energy to do that, because it's just what I feel like I was put on this planet to do. So I'm very lucky in that respect. What is interesting is trying to balance the idea that certain solos or certain songs that we play, it kind of would be weird, and I think it would be disappointing for people if I didn't play the solo that they know from the record, which is great and is totally understandable. At the same time, I like to mess around with things and play with solos because that's what keeps it creatively interesting for me. So it's finding a bit of a balance between giving you guys what you want. Don't mess around with the Tell Me How It Feels solo. Play the Tell Me How It Feels solo how people want to hear it. But then also something like Warm Love, which is also got a couple of like defined bits in it. You got that kind of like... Pretty much past that point, free reign. So I'm like, cool, that's my moment to kind of, go off-piste, as it were. And the cool thing about that, or the thing that keeps you on your toes there, is that some nights it works and you feel like you're flying and everything's going really well. And then other nights, you've forgotten to strap your wings on and you fall flat on your face, which is, not the most wonderful sensation in the world. And the only other thing, off on a tangent, the only other thing which tempers all of that is the fact that people film everything and then with no context, it ends up on YouTube. And you end up with the bit of the solo where I'm going... trying to find notes. And I remember we did our first tour with Cardinal Black was supporting Miles Kennedy from Alter Bridge around the UK. And it was big shows. It was like, I think our third ever gig as Cardinal Black was at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London to 2,000 people. So we were thrown right in at the deep end. We'd done like a warm-up gig in a pub to like 50 people. And then it was like, right, off to Shepherd's Bush Empire. And because we were such a new band, nobody knew who we were, nobody knew the songs, and there wasn't much on social media or on YouTube off the back of that tour, apart from, and it's still there, you can find it if you so wish, me playing the Tell Me How It Feels solo in Manchester, I do believe. And I played some notes in that solo that nobody has ever heard and nobody will ever hear again. New musical discoveries that should have remained undiscovered. And it's just like, well, that's just sod's law. That's just, that's pretty much the only thing that's on YouTube from that entire tour is me messing up the solo. So that is constantly in the back of my mind, just to kind of like, well, you can have fun and you can explore and try and discover new things, but try and keep it within the realms of what sounds good, because otherwise someone will be on YouTube. So, and then you just look like a Muppet. So, but yeah, to short answer to your question, I'm very lucky to do what I do, and I never have to remind myself of that or build myself up for a gig, Even you could have had the worst day. I remember we did a gig in Leipzig in 2024, maybe, and I'd had a pretty bad day. We'd done a show the night before in Frankfurt, in Frankfurt the night before. And I remember I got off stage. This is a off-piste story. Got off stage, glanced at my phone just to see if my wife had texted me or anything. And it was like, you have 18,000 unread emails. And when I went on stage, I had no unread emails. So I'm like, what the hell is happening? And every 2 seconds, I was having an email off Facebook saying, there's suspicious activity detected on your account. Basically, someone had hacked my email, had reset the recovery address on my email, and then as a consequence, had hacked my Facebook account. And my Facebook account, and by extension, my Instagram account, because it's all Meta, is such a key part of my job. It's like someone stealing your life's work to a degree. I suddenly didn't have access to any of that. So for like 3 days on that tour, I was just every waking moment of every day trying to solve this problem. The fact that I had been locked out of all my social media accounts. And then we had a gig in Leipzig. And I remember it's just like the moment you walk on stage, you can be having the worst day in the world. And the moment you walk on stage, you snap out of it And it doesn't matter whether you're playing to 50 people or 1,500. It's just cool. This is amazing. This is the perfect tonic to the sod that hacked my Instagram account. So, yeah. Yes, man. Oh, cool. Yeah. We don't mean to. It just happens. That's just more distortion and delay. No. So... Yeah, absolutely. No, I think so. A couple of points there. Faster. Playing songs faster is an interesting one because I guess in a perfect world you would play the songs at the tempo that they were recorded at. I don't necessarily always agree with that. I think there's something quite nice about feeding off the energy of like, that was a great gig. That was one of the biggest gigs of the tour. I think it was like 600, 700 people or something. You get a buzz off that. You get an excitement and you're like, what happens? Your adrenaline starts creeping up. You play the songs a little bit faster. Whether it's Adam, our drummer, leading that, or whether it's me leading that, it all starts to creep. And the crowd feed off that. This like symbiosis thing goes on where you kind of feed off each other. And things get a little bit faster and things get maybe a little bit louder. It's just part and parcel of being human, I guess, and not AI. Which it will come to at some point. We'll just send AI versions of ourselves out to tour. But in regard to things sounding bigger, I think it's making a record and playing live are two very different things. And I probably do use a little bit more gain on my guitar sound live because it's live and it's a bit more fun and it's a bit more rock and roll. Recording a record, you're so conscious of not just the tone, but like the texture and where that sits within a mix. So like Ride Home, the opening track that we play, is about as straightforward a song as I've ever written. It's like the big rock song in the set. Now, on the record, if you listen to that on the record, I think the gain is probably closer to like... Of course, you get on stage in front of 600 people and it suddenly becomes... because you want it to sound like Pete Townsend. So I think that if I apply that logic to myself, everyone else in the band probably applies that to themselves as well. So I think Adam is probably hitting a little bit harder. Michael, our keys player, is probably dirtying up the Hammond sound a little bit more. Sam, our bass player, is probably digging in a little bit harder. So I think it's just one of those things that, you know... Honestly, if there's one thing that I'm constantly trying to improve upon as a guitar player, I will record gigs on my phone, just like stick my phone up on the monitor, like facing up at myself, and then maybe once the dust has settled the next day, I will watch back bits of the show. And just in the cold light of day, I will analyze what I'm doing. And more often than not, there's two things. I'm playing with too much gain, and I'm playing too many notes. And it's because I'm full of adrenaline. You watch that then when you're not coursing with adrenaline and you're sat in the back of the van bouncing over the Swiss border and you're like, what are you doing? Play half the amount of notes that you played last night. It doesn't sound good. You're not impressing anyone. And you just sound like you're just showing off. So then you get to the gig that night, you get on stage, everyone's there, everyone's clapping, enjoying it, your adrenaline, and you turn into Van Halen again. So knowing that there is something that you can improve upon and actually improving upon it in the moment are two very different things. So I'm constantly trying to improve on that, you know, playing less notes, you know. Oh, nothing is done on purpose. If we could do stuff on purpose, we'd be able to do it the night after. No, it's like I said, it's just human nature and it's everyone getting a bit excited and digging in and playing a little bit harder. One kind of, not argument we have within the band, but one constant kind of like point of discussion is, especially on the last record that we made, Midnight of Valencia, there's a lot of elements on that record that we recorded live in the studio. Stuff like Mellotron and Moog, like synthesizers, I guess, kind of like strange instruments that we can't physically, unless we brought someone out on tour to play those instruments live, you can't physically play them. Ride Home, the first track on the record and the opening track of the set, there's a bagpipe solo. I love bagpipes. I'm not paying someone to come out on tour and play bagpipes. So one discussion we constantly have is, what do you do in a live context then? Because these days, it's the easiest thing in the world to stick that on something like a Roland SPDSX that Adam uses next to him to fire either tempos or samples, or even our outro music. I don't know if you noticed, we had Tom Jones blasting as we walked off stage. That's on Adam's SPDSX. So the moment the down chord of Tied Up in Blue, the last song, finishes, ba ba da ba ba da, fired off the Roland. So you can put anything you want on there. And we put the bagpipes on there because we were like, well, it's kind of a crucial part of the song. I could play I could do an approximation of the bagpipes. Play the bagpipe melody. It doesn't sound like bagpipes. So you put it on the Roland SPDSX, which I always have mixed feelings about. I've seen some bands in the past where you're listening to them live and you're counting the people on stage. And you think, well, there's 3 people on stage and I can hear 4-part vocal harmonies. What's happening there? Or there's 3 people on stage, not one of those is playing an acoustic guitar, but I can hear an acoustic guitar really clearly through the PA system. I don't particularly agree with that. I think that's getting into the realms of being a little bit disingenuous. And the moment you start putting big backing vocals or big overdriven distorted guitars on a Roland SPDSX, I think you're lying to yourself and your audience a little bit. So we have endless discussions about that, because there's a track on the record called Breathe, which is a bit mental. It's got a couple of weird effects on it. It's got Moog, it's got Mellotron, it's got all manner of stuff that we just can't replicate live. So we tried playing it live without those elements, and it just felt empty. It just felt like it was missing something. So rather than run into the laptop and putting all of this stuff on there, we just thought, we'll just leave it. Let it be a track on the record, and it doesn't have to be a live thing. So, here we go. Let's have one more question, I'll play another song. Yes, man. Sorry, I'll come back to you in a minute. Sorry. So, wraparounds, I didn't touch on that earlier. Wraparound, I think, is one of those things that is, like, criminally underrated. I think wraparounds fall into the same category as P90s for a lot of people. Because they were, like, an earlier version of something, people discard them as like, oh, well, they got rid of that because they improved upon it. P90s were done away with for the most part because humbuckers came in. Wraparound tailpieces were done away because you had the ABR and the stop tail come in. I think because of that, people think, well, it's just a lesser piece of equipment. And maybe with the wraparound, in fairness, obviously this is intonatable. So you can adjust the individual saddles. You can make sure every string is in tune from there to there. On a 50s Junior, you couldn't do that. If you got above the 12th fret, it might be having to bend notes into tune a little bit because the intonation wasn't spot on. But I think there's such a cool combination between P90s and wrap tails. P90s, for me, feel like the truest representation of what your guitar actually sounds like. Humbuckers have such a distinctive mid-range and character. They impart their own character on any guitar that they're in. P90s feel like you've just stuck little microphones in your guitar, and every acoustic nuance and resonance, whether it's coming from the neck, the tuning pegs, the body, the whatever it is, feels like it's being truly representative in the sound of the pickups. Same with the wrap tail. It just feels like, well, there's just less things getting in the way. It's literally a piece of metal, the strings wrap over there, and that piece of metal is bolted directly into the body. I just think it's a very distinctive sound that has its own character and its own voice and its own unique identity that you don't get with an ABR1 and a stop tail, or you don't get with an ABR1 and a big old metal tailpiece like some of the newer Rev Stars. I was watching an interview recently with PRS, with Paul Reed-Smith, and the question he was asked was along the lines of what do you feel makes the biggest impact on a guitar tonally? And his answer was something along the lines of every little bit. Whether the tuning pegs make 1% of difference to the sound of the guitar is irrelevant, really. They make a difference. The nut, whatever it is, the neck material, this guitar has carbon fiber reinforcement in the neck. I hope I never have to find out why you might need a carbon fiber reinforced neck, but it does, in case you want to hit someone with it, I guess. Raptail, P90s, the pots, what value of potentiometers you're using. Every little part of a guitar has its own impact on the guitar. And I think Raptail piece and P90s is just an underrated combination of stuff, you know. And most importantly, just looks cool. If we tell ourselves that we will play guitars because they sound great and not because they look cool, first and foremost, we're lying to ourselves. One more question, man.
What's your approach when you do a song? Say, I'm going to use this guitar for that song,
Yeah.
and another guitar for that song. How do you approach that?
I think much to Yamaha's annoyance, who would absolutely love it if I played Yamaha every moment of every day, I'm a musician and I've always been quite pragmatic in the sense that you use the right tool for these are tools. These are tools, and this is my job. You use the right tool for the job. If you're building a house, you're not going to use a trowel to. I'm clearly displaying my lack of building knowledge here. You're not going to use one tool to build a house. You're not going to use one tool to fix a car. You will use the right tools for the job, and that's always been my approach to guitar choice and songs. And certain songs lend themselves to certain guitars. Sometimes it's even as simple as what guitar was that song written on. So sometimes the guitar I play live on a certain track, it might be because that's the guitar that I wrote that song on, and there's something quite nice about continuing that legacy of that song and continuing it through with the guitar that it came into existence with. There's a couple of obvious decisions. Does a track need like a trem on or a vibrato on? If so, I'll probably use a Jazz Master at the moment. Does a track need big, rocky humbuckers, like nasally pointed mid-range of humbuckers? At the moment, it's an SG. It could be a Pacifica, it could be a Revstar, it could be a 335, whatever. If you're trying to do a job, you use the right tool for that job. And like I said, I've just been quite lucky with the guitars that I've had available to me, and I think I've always been quite practical in the sense of just use the guitar that does the job best. So, cool. One more question, then I'm going to play another song.
When did you start playing music, and why did you choose a guitar instead of a bagpipe?
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Because you play the guitar like a bagpipe.
Yeah. I started playing guitar when I was, I think maybe about 13, 14, thereabouts. And like, I can give you the romantic answer that my dad was a huge influence on me, and my dad loved guitars. There was always a guitar around the house, and there was always guitar music on, and it was inevitable that I would eventually play guitar. That's the romantic answer. The real answer is I was in school with a guy called Josh, who was my best friend and like arch nemesis in that way that you have when you're like 12 years old. He was my best mate. We used to hang out all the time, and I hated his guts because he was taller than me. He was better in school than me. He was better looking. He was better on a skateboard. He was better at football, better at rugby, quicker, better at cross country. Anything I tried to do, Josh would be better. And Josh started playing guitar. I was like, oh, fucking have you. I'll start playing guitar and I'll be better at guitar than Josh. And he gave up after about 3 weeks. So I won that one. So screw you, Josh. He's a fireman now, so I think he won. He's got a proper job. And honestly, it's the only thing I've ever done in my life where it kind of made sense straight away. Like on a very basic level of like, if you play that note, that's lower than that note. It just all clicked into place pretty quickly. And I just fell in love with the idea that every waking moment, if I wasn't in school and I wasn't playing football, I was playing guitar. So, I mean, much to the detriment of my academic results, I imagine, because I'd probably be a doctor now if I hadn't found guitar, because all of the time that I should have spent revising for exams, I spent playing guitar. So, it was only ever going to be guitar. I think it wasn't as though there were other instruments that I dabbled in particularly. Like I said, there was always a guitar around the house, and that probably did play a role in that. I remember my dad was a frustrated guitar player, probably thinking back. He wanted to play guitar and he couldn't. He knew 3 chords two of which were the same chord, just played in different ways, which I never had the heart to tell him. And I was like, you know, a D and an E. The other one is still a D, but never mind. I think once I was born in 1991, that was his kind of excuse to like, well, I've got the house, I've got the kid, I've got the wife. Now I'm going to buy a guitar. So we bought a USA Strat that used to live in its case behind the sofa in our living room. And it always was like a hugely special occasion of like, if my parents were like Hoover in the living room or my mother was out, my dad would be like, should we get the guitar out? And I can still vividly remember the smell of the guitar, the smell of the case, and just the excitement around him getting this case out, opening it up. And it's like that scene in Wayne's World, like, ah, you know, angels fluttering out of it. And that, thinking back, was hugely influential. You know, that sense of excitement and just like worshipping this instrument, this inanimate object, was quite a big moment in my life, I guess. But principally because Josh started playing guitar. Strangely, there were not really any musical people in my family. I'm told that my grandfather had an amazing voice. My great-grandfather, who worked underground down the pit from the age of about 14 to 65. And so my great-grandmother used to tell me that he never would have come up from underground if they'd had a pub and a betting shop underground. But apparently he had an amazing voice. That's the only evidence I can find of anyone in my family being vaguely musical. So where this idea of trying to be a rock star came from, for me, I have no idea. But I'm eternally indebted to my parents, who, when I showed a bit of like natural aptitude for the guitar, didn't go, yeah, that's great. Let's maybe focus on all of this other important study and stuff, because let's face facts, you're probably never going to make a living from messing around with a guitar. They were incredibly encouraging, and my dad would go out of his way to like foster that enthusiasm and take me places and take me to gigs. And if I needed to go to rehearsal, he would drive me there and wait in the car park until the rehearsal was over. Both my parents were amazing, and you know, given that, you know, I'm very fortunate now in that I do make a living from playing music, but it took a very long time to get to that point. And, you know, they would have been very much forgiven for just saying, probably time to pack it in now, probably time to get a real job, which my grandparents used to say to me all the time. So, right, I'm going to play another song and then we'll have some more questions. I'm going to play a short little track because it's a neat little segue into talking about something which I get a lot of questions about, is soloing and building a solo and how to structure a guitar solo, basically. And it's a fairly big subject, and it's often hard to try and demonstrate how you would approach putting a solo together, especially when a lot of my solos are quite long. So how do you try and break that down? This one's about 30 seconds, and some of you might have heard it, some of you probably haven't. Sounds a bit like this. So, to give a bit of context of that, has anyone heard that? Has anyone seen that? I get tagged in covers of that every single day on Instagram. So it was a video I did with a YouTuber, a Dutch YouTuber called Paul Davids, I guess. Someone's corrected me yesterday in the Netherlands. Edgar Davids, it makes sense. Paul asked me to do a solo on this video, and obviously I knew how big Paul's YouTube channel was and that it was likely to be seen by a lot of people. But at that particular moment in time, my little boy was about 3 days old, so I was drowning figuratively and literally in shit. So I had bigger fish to fry. I was quite a busy man, and Paul's emailing me going, do you want to do this solo on a thing? There's some other guitar players do it. Didn't tell me what guitar players was doing it. Just said, do you want to record a solo? I was like, yeah, cool. Send it over. I'll do it as soon as I get a chance. And I spent probably cumulatively 45 minutes on that maybe. He sent me the backing track while I was driving back from like a hospital appointment or something. So I stuck it on in the car, listened to it for the duration of the drive home, formed some rough idea of what I wanted to play. And then I got home and just figured out the actual notes that I was kind of hearing in my head. So it was like whatever it was. In hindsight, if I'd known it was going to get like millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of views, I probably would have put more effort into it. But then it probably wouldn't have ended up sounding the way it did. So I guess there's a reason for everything. But in terms of like singular moments in my life that have had the biggest impact, that's probably the most impactful 30 seconds of my life, apart from another 30 seconds. Like I said, millions of people have viewed that, and for whatever reason, it just seemed to connect with a lot of people, and a lot of people found me through that video. And it's, looking back, I guess the reason it seemed to connect with so many people is that it's short and it's memorable. It's quite a whistleable solo, if that's the word. So you can hum it, you can whistle it. It's easily rememberable and it's quite melodic. And it's probably the best example I have in terms of my approach to building solos. And there's two key things at play. First and foremost, and something that will probably ruin my guitar playing for you if you follow me, if you listen to my music, if you follow me on YouTube, the band, whatever. Once I tell you this, you will see it all the time. So if you don't want to know it, close your ears. Low to high. Every single solo I do, pretty much, starts low, aims high. And the reason for that is if you try and do it the other way around, it all feels very anticlimactic. Anything you do in life, anything fun you do in life should start slow and probably get quicker and end with a bit of excitement. If I try and do it backwards, it doesn't quite work. Still works, doesn't sound terrible. It's not as exciting as doing it the other way around, where you start low and you build high. It takes the listener on a journey. It tells a story. Think of how you would read a book. It has a defined start, middle, and end. It starts slowly, it sets the scene, it builds to a crescendo. The crescendo in my mind for that solo is not the actual final bit. The high point of the solo for me is this. That bit that comes just before it. That's the crescendo of the story, of the solo. That's the bit where it kind of peaks. And then it's just a case about finishing it off, letting people know what the resolution is. Every story has a start, middle, and an end. Starts slowly and builds to a crescendo. Any solo should follow the same pattern. If you start with fast, crazy stuff and end with slow, melodic, bluesy playing, it's not going to feel right. Try it again. started, you hit your ceiling and you left yourself nowhere to go. If you start slow, you build up. It gives it a narrative, it gives it a structure, it gives it a sense of excitement. The other thing I do is repeat myself, which I appreciate guitar players often think of as a little bit of a kind of dirty word, because if you're repeating yourself, you're probably repeating yourself because you've run out of ideas. I would argue that there's probably a lot more meat on the bones of what you just played or what you just said than you actually realize. So, play it again. Exactly the same. It's the same 4 notes. And the reason for that is the audience have just heard it. The listener has just heard it. It makes sense to them and it drags them back in because they're interested to see what you're going to say next. Which leads me on to my final point. A, B, A, B, A, B, tick-tock, tick-tock, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. Anything I play, I will structure in terms of having a question or having an A section and having an answer or a B section. You break that solo down. If any chord in the world sounds more like a musical question than that, I've yet to find it. Start again. There's your question. Your answer. Your question. Answer. Ending on that major third couldn't sound more like an answer if you tried. You're giving that sense of resolution an answer to what you just played. And then, you may have noticed, the next lick of the solo. Sound familiar? It's exactly the same lick as the start of the solo, just in a different register. But because it's in a different register, you've taken people on a little bit of a journey. You've taken them up the neck. You're leading the ear into what comes next. I appreciate it's hard to try and explain the concept of building a guitar solo without sounding like Plato or like you're trying to get all very faux philosophical on it. But it's one of those things that it is just about being a storyteller, and it's about building a narrative and making what you're saying on the guitar sound interesting and taking people on a little bit of a journey. Say again, man. I'm being deafened by fans up here, sorry. Honestly, like, copying singers is a huge part of it, and singers naturally will pick great notes because singers are not thinking in terms of modes or shapes or boxes or positions. Aretha Franklin wasn't there going, am I in position 4 or 5 of the pentatonic box? It's not how singers think. Singers think low-high, which is kind of how I approach the guitar. I don't know, 70% of my soloing is on one string. And the reason for that is it kind of forces you to think melodically because you can't relax into your pentatonic nonsense. You have to go. You can say so much on one string, and it's invariably interesting because you're not just relying on your shapes. So I'm not always thinking in terms of like chord tones or am I trying to outline this chord or outline that chord. I'm just thinking what note says what I want to say and tells the part of the story which I'm trying to tell at that point. And if it's a, you know, like I said, if it's a like a question kind of moment or like a kind of moment of like tension, that chord in that solo does that beautifully. But you need to answer that. You need to answer or release that tension. So you go. end on that major third of that C, and it's beautiful. It just resolves that tension. You got the tension of the... If anything, moment sounds like a moment of like sadness or questioning or kind of like dispute or unresolved, whatever it is, it's that little run. But question, answer, question, answer. Yeah, honestly, I'll, kind of like hum a melody and try and figure out where I can play that on the guitar and in what interesting ways I can play that on the guitar. Another thing that's interesting to do is pick a melody, whatever that happens to be, and copy that melody. And I like the example I always use is something like Sweet Child of Mine, because everyone knows it. If you wrote that melody down on sheet music, it would be that. It doesn't sound like Axl Rose singing it, because Axl Rose is not going, she goes smiling and she's to me, leaping between the notes. He's going... All of these little inflections, do you slide into a note? Do you hit that first note of the melody by doing this? Just go boom, straight in. Or do you go from half a tone below? Do you go from a tone below? Do you go from a tone and a half below? Are you sliding from a half tone below? From a tone below? From a tone and a half? Are you sliding from the first fret? All of these options, you have so many different ways of hitting a note and then expressing that note. Something guitar players do, because we like to do it, is land on a note and just wiggle away without any real forethought as to why you're adding vibrato to a note. Everyone, including myself, are very guilty of it. You land on that note, and instead of just letting it ring, you go, or worse, you go... Because why would you not? You're told that, you're a guitar player. You wiggle away, you add vibrato to a note. If you stop for a second and think, what actually is vibrato? Vibrato is that fluctuation that a singer will get in their voice as they're running out of breath. So vibrato doesn't come in. If you sing that note, she's got a smile, you don't go, she's got a smile, straight away. You would go, she's got a smile. It would come in because you're running out of breath and you're starting to lose that note, and it's your body's way of trying to sustain that note. Apply that to the guitar. Go. And then analyze singer's vibrato. Singer will usually not have like a one-size-fits-all vibrato. They will have a vibrato that increases in speed and intensity as the note dies. So it might go... It's not going to be this. It would be... Super subtle. It makes a hell of a difference if you're trying to sound melodic, if you're trying to sound like a singer. Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Paul Rodgers, Paolo Nutini, all of these guys that I, Chris Stapleton, that I, idolize as singers. Just listening to how they phrase things, how they get to notes, If you take that second note of the solo, of the melody, do something interesting with it. Instead of just pulling off to that note, go... Bend up to it from a half step below. It gives it like a vocal inflection and a vocal character. So that's how I practice all of that stuff, is listening to melodies, figuring out exactly what the singer is doing and how he is getting to that note. Is he adding vibrato? Is she adding vibrato? Is she sliding off a note? Or is she cutting it dead? All of these little idiosyncratic human ways of expressing a note. Just try and copy that into your guitar playing. Right, I'm going to play another song because we're running out of time. And then all of the people that wanted to ask me what battery I use in my fuzz pedal, but didn't want to ask me in person, can wait until we're finished, and I'll hang around. We can have photos, we can chat, whatever. But I'm going to play 2 more songs before they kick us out of the shop. Right.
And the solid doors and dance no floor was painted walls that held all our phones. Welcome home, sweet solitude. Yeah.
Gotta stay on your feet. You might be needed again.
In those early nights, and those midnight flights, just to get on home and just to be alone with you. There's not much change between comfort and control. Can anybody help me? Because there's nothing like this sound of silence. And I need your warm love. Oh, your warm love. I got to have your warm love. Yeah, and that's killing me deep down inside. I need your warm love that I can't hide. And you're moving on. Yeah, we're moving on. And that new job you've got that you don't like that much. And never held you back from living the life. Can anybody help me? 'Cause there's nothing like this sound. Can anybody stop this loneliness? Bright lights keep calling me away. Yes, they do. And I need your warm love. Oh, your warm love. I got to have your warm love. Yeah, and that's killing me deep down inside. I need your warm love that I cannot hide. It's killing me.
On the bass tonight and every night, Sexy Sam Williams, baby.
And I need your warm love. Oh, your warm love. I got to have your warm love. Yeah, and that's killing me deep down inside. I need your warm love that I cannot hide. Yeah. And it's killing me inside. us down. It shouldn't be a movement. It's not on us to tie the ends. Why is it pride to carry us through? Tell me, girl, and I feel this ceiling is getting close. We need the strength to shelter from the broken glass, cutting us down. Tell me how it feels, baby. Tell me how I'm supposed to know. Tell me how it feels, baby. Because I don't know. We need the freedom to find the time and to devise a better system for ourselves. To get on top and stop this bleeding, hoping, needling. Stop pushing back, yeah. Tell me how it feels, baby. Tell me how I'm supposed to know. Tell me how it feels, baby. Because I don't know. Tell me how it feels, baby. Tell me how I'm supposed to know. Tell me how it feels, baby. Because I don't know.
Cheers, guys. Dankeschön, vielen Dank. I'll be hanging around now. Get those battery questions ready.